In this week's Race Around the World, we saw the teams venture to the visually stunning Kingdom of Jordan. And unfortunately, there was one team last of the pit stop. And this week it was father-daughter duo Linton and Sharik. How are you both doing?
Doing well. Having
Yes,
us.
definitely.
Yeah,
Thanks for, yeah.
of course, of course. Okay, let's just start with this. What were maybe your initial expectations going into the race?
I think the expectation going in was to go as far as we possibly could. I
Mhm.
know there's $1 million on the line, but I think our main aim was to just, get to know each other better and just use this experience of a lifetime to just get closer.
Mhm.
I feel like going into the race, I knew it was going to be physical, but I didn't know it was going to be nearly as physical as it actually was.
Mm.
I think, watching prior seasons, watching it and doing it are two very different things. And so being able to, do the challenges with my dad, where it was so rewarding because I was like, oh my gosh, like, oh my God, we're on the Amazing Race. But it was much more physical and much more mentally and emotionally draining than I was expecting.
Sharik, we have to talk about that second part of the Italian mega leg. Why did you want to give up so bad and just walk?
Yeah, so essentially, I think before even talking about that, I think context is really important. And
Yeah.
I think context wasn't given to the viewers as what actually happened. So the first piece of context is that it was a 16-hour day. That's very important to note. Yes, people know it's a megalo, but what they don't know is the actual amount of time that it took. So Ducati took my dad about 2 hours. Then we had a 2-hour drive to Florence. And then chiseling took me about 2 hours.
Mhm.
So it was a bunch of like really long tasks that, people didn't really get to actually see the amount of time that it took. That's the biggest thing. And then I think essentially what happened that day is that so for further context, again, because context is important,
Yeah.
my diagnoses are depression, anxiety, and a mood disorder. I have a therapist. I'm working through my reactions and my triggers and stuff like that. But that day I was triggered because the chiseling challenge was my first roadblock I ever did, and it was my chance to show my dad that I was an equal partner in this team. I could be an asset to our team, and this was the first time that my dad was counting on me to do something, and I failed, and I felt like I failed him. And so what you do see on screen is me go to my dad and be like, Dad, I feel like I'm going to cry. But what you don't see is me actually start crying on camera and apologizing profusely to him, telling him, I'm so sorry. I feel like I let you down. I failed you. You were counting on me and I really let you down. So essentially what had happened directly after that is that my kind of how overwhelmed I was feeling really kicked in. And that kind of was a tipping point of my dad counting on me not being able to execute, because we got there in fourth and we left in eighth. And almost like 5 minutes after we left, Glenda and Lumumba got their clue and they came in an hour after me. So it was now on my shoulders. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am costing us this race. We had an opportunity to stay at the front of the pack, and I was one that failed. And so that's really the context necessary for us to even talk about that day, because it wasn't all shown.
Yeah.
And it's just that I felt as though, my dad was really counting on me that day, and I failed him. And I hate failing him. I'm an only child. His opinion matters so much to me. And for me to not do something well, especially when he's counting on me, was just terrible. It was just too much for me to handle that day.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like anyone, can relate to that. Like, we always want to make our parents proud. And when you're not doing that, you're really hard on yourself. So, all right, let's fast forward to the next episode. Jordan, where you guys were unfortunately eliminated. Do you know how far ahead that Aubrey and David were ahead of you guys? Or did you ever see any other teams? Like, did you think you were close maybe to not get last?
I think first of all, leaving the sand area, we knew we were about 30 minutes behind. When we got to Petra, we did see one team running from the puzzle area. Now that we think about it, it must have been Aubrey and David. And then we started with the puzzle, something you didn't see on TV. And then we said, no, let's switch. So we switched to doing the camel. I convinced Sharik first to switch because I grew up doing that. I grew up taking water to not camel, but cows. Because and so we chose to do that because it was really hot, 110 degrees. It was a whole lot of flies. And so the puzzle was proving to be very difficult. But we knew they were ahead of us. We knew we were last, and we knew we just wanted to finish what we started.
Yeah, absolutely.
To piggyback off of that, Dad, Jordan was like a straight shot leg. There was no real room to make up time. And I think that is really the problem. What also wasn't shown is that we got lost in the desert for about 20 minutes. Our driver went the wrong way. And all of a sudden it was just sand. There were no markers anywhere. And I was like looking at our like production team. I was like, can you call someone? Because we were like lost, like actively, no road in sight. And that also wasn't shown. And so, it was really a straight shot. So if you're behind at all, you're behind. Like there's no real room to make up.
Yeah. All right. So my final question is just very briefly, what did it mean to both of you to be able to compete together as a father and a duo on The Amazing Race?
It meant the world to me because this is something we've always wanted to do, and to be able to do it together was just amazing.
Yeah, definitely. I think my dad is like literally one of my favorite people. He's probably the funniest person I know. So I just had like such a good, and I was honestly really sad that, the show didn't show more of our like singing in the car or like us like skipping in Florence or whatever random stuff we did. Because it was a great time. And I feel like I learned so much about my dad, and, it was a blessing to be in that space with him, because I know, how many people don't have this kind of relationship with their father, and just for any kind of reasons, for cultural reasons, because I'm queer and he's Jamaican. But there was just so many layers, of our relationship that I feel like could resonate with so many people. And so it was just so special to be able to be that representation on TV, for the people that, don't see themselves on TV that often. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, it was a pleasure getting to know both of you. As I mentioned, it was so fun getting to watch you both run this race together. For all of our viewers out there, keep tuning in to The Amazing Race every Wednesday on CBS. Thanks, Linton Sharik.